was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 1. I completely like spun out of control in my mind, was running on the freeway.
What I guess caused it?
I think it was really a spiritual thing. And I saw a lot of dark things during that time too. So that was another reason for me to believe it was something more than just a illness that happened. So after I got healed, it was a supernatural encounter, right? Like my hands were shaking. And after we got done praying, I felt like that spirit, that oppression that was on me, that was causing this, was lifted. It's been over 11 years. And I haven't had to take medication.
And people don't realize like the power of prayer.
Mental illness is something that is real. It's something that's happening, and it's a battle that's going on in your mind. And there are different ways that we can approach that. Because it was spiritual, it was gonna need to be handled spiritually. And
you're now this Christian content creator, and you're at a very high level. You got a lot of followers, you have a lot of people looking at you. So let's talk about like your desert seasons. And I mean, do you even have desert seasons? Do you struggle? Some days do you feel like you hear God? Other weeks and months do you feel like it's dry?
Yeah, I think it's such a good question because it's not like brought up or like spoken about enough, especially in the lane of like seeing all these like Christian content creators. I think it makes a lot of people think like they're super Christians. They've gotten to this level with the Lord where they just know how to be on fire and there's nothing ever wrong. At the end of the day, the amount of time that you consume that content from that person is like not even 1% of their day. I would say most Christians struggle with dry season, or like most people in ministry struggle with it.
All right, guys, I got my good friend Dayne here. We're excited about this podcast. A lot of people don't really know, like, we have so many conversations offline. And so to be able to get to do this for our audience, you know, I always call Dayne. I'm like, hey, bro, I need 15 minutes. And all of a sudden it's like 2 hours. So the exciting thing about this podcast is I want to get into things that you haven't talked about much.
Yeah.
Your story's been covered multiple times. So if you guys want to know more about Dayne, obviously just type in the name on YouTube and there's a million podcasts about that. But I want to go back to, you know, people see you as the overnight success Dayne with how much, you know, YouTube followers you have, Instagram followers you have, and just how big your actual channels are. But what they don't realize is where you started your journey. So let's go back to the very first YouTube channel. Like, what were you doing and when did you get on YouTube and how did you start?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's interesting too. I've been doing the faith-based stuff on social YouTube for the last 6 years, but I actually started making content when I was like 18, 19 years old. And I just felt like I wanted to encourage people. It had nothing to do with faith, but it was just wanting to share part of my life. Like the YouTube channel's name was Dayne's Great Journey. So I was just feeling this need to want to get up, film, and develop my voice and be an encourager. And I did that for 10 years and I never had more than probably like 500 subscribers over that 10-year period of time. And I even started a YouTube channel with my brother maybe a year into that too, which was called DRK Fitness, which was Dayne Ross Kamela, because my brother's name's Ross Kamela Fitness. And we started a YouTube channel around fitness probably at the perfect time when YouTube was getting big. We did that for maybe a year before stopping that. But yeah, I was on YouTube for a long time. And for me, it was way more about learning and just growing in this this skill set of just sharing something that I cared about. And it didn't really matter about the views. And I think if I never went through that for a decade, I would have never been prepared to jump on social media, start sharing my faith and be okay with not getting a lot of views for a period of time too. But it was, I think that was like the training ground for what I do today, you know?
So when was the time that you decided like, okay, I want to share my journey with people? Because was it more of like an organic thing where you were like, oh, I just want to do this because it's fun? Or was there actually like a standpoint of like, no, like I want to turn this into a business? Or was it just like, let's just put videos out and have fun?
Yeah, so with that first page, it was definitely more of a passion project. I think it stemmed too from getting into my faith. Because at that time, I'd grown up in the church, but I didn't have a relationship with Jesus. And it was around 18 where I said, like, I want to get to know you and spend time with you. And I think it was around that time too, where I felt like the Lord had put the gift of encouragement on my heart. And because he did that, I just wanted to encourage people around me. I was growing and I thought YouTube and making videos was an outlet for me to do that in a way that I didn't have to be anyone. I got to just share things I cared about. So I never thought about like, oh, I need to have subscribers. I need to turn this into a business. It was more of how can I learn to articulate things that matter to me? And maybe if it can reach one or two people, that's like good enough. And even in that first year, you'd have random people who would comment on it and be like, hey, this really helped me. So just even that in a form of validation of, hey, this video got 10 views and there was someone who I do not know who just reached out and said, this video really helped me. And I said, wow, if I can encourage people in person and do it online, maybe it can be something one day. But that was never a thought for like the first decade.
Okay, so then take me through then the time where like your life really then changed. Let's just cover the story that everybody really probably already knows. But for the people that don't know about the story, kind of give like that time frame. Because was that YouTube channel before this or was it after?
It was before it, yeah. Okay. So started the YouTube channel around 18 to 19. And then the mental health stuff happened around 23 years old. So for those of you who are listening to this, maybe not knowing me for the first time, I had a mental health crisis. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 1, and I completely like spun out of control in my mind, was running on the freeway, eventually hospitalized for 2 weeks, put on a lot of psychotic drugs to calm myself down because I was in a really manic state. And for those of you guys who don't know what this type of mental illness is you go through something called psychosis where you can't really delineate reality from not. And it got so bad where I needed to be hospitalized, put on medication. And then in that same year that this happened to me, I was also healed at a church service I went to when I was prayed for by the pastor. And it's been over 11 years. And I haven't had to take medication, never went through any of the side effects of someone who has this type of mental illness where there's no cure for it. So I think that was maybe a part of that journey too of I went through something really difficult. I eventually started making YouTube videos again, but I think it was preparation for me eventually starting to talk about my faith, which would lead to me talking about mental health and helping people find freedom from even like things like anxiety and stuff like that.
Yeah. So what do you think the trigger was? Because did you have any signs when you were younger about this mental health, or was there anything in your family that showed these signs, or what I guess caused it?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I think it was really a spiritual thing. I know there are people on both sides of the spectrum where, hey, this is an illness, there's no cure for it, you're gonna have to be on medication for the rest of your life. I have people who believe like that, but it didn't sit on either side of my family. I was never a hyperactive kid, was never on ADHD or ADD medication, and it kind of just came out of nowhere. And because of that, we as a believing family thought it was a spiritual thing. And I saw a lot of dark things during that time too. So that was another reason for me to believe it was something more than just a illness that happened out of random chance that I would have to deal with. So we believed that because it was spiritual, it was going to need to be handled spiritually. And just seeing that healing and happen in person really kind of confirmed in my mind that it was like something that was like supernatural.
If you were to ask like your mom or dad during that phase, like what do you think was going through their minds as seeing their son like going through this, just going from it seems like normal childhood, like no signs of it, and all of a sudden it seemed like it was pretty quick twitch. Like what do you think they would say to that?
I think their first observations were Dayne's like getting really like hyper, like very energetic. Everything's got to like grow. We got to like advance, because I was into personal development at that time. So I think the first stage of it was like me just becoming more and more hyper, like really fast with my speech, really just excitable about everything I was doing. And then kind of starting to get delusional where I thought people were following me. I thought there were cameras in our house. So it got to that point, but my parents never went through something like this. So I don't think they knew how to handle it. It was just, we need to make sure our son's like safe, because I was taking the car out at night and just driving around town and sometimes losing the car, getting out of the car, jumping into other people's cars, like weird stuff that happened. And I think their response was just, we don't know what's going on, but there's something going on with like Dayne's mind. And eventually it was, I ran away, and then the cops came and I was in a hospital. So then it just kind of sped up everything to, hey, this is like a serious mental thing that we need to take care of.
Yeah, let's talk about that situation on the freeway and all this stuff. Like what, because people hear like bipolar, they hear manic episodes, they hear all these different things, but like give me exactly like what was happening.
Yeah, so I woke up that morning just like any other morning, but again, I was in this manic state. And I had previously gone to LA with my sister, and that's when a lot of it really started. And there were grandiose ideas of like, oh, I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to do these things. So I got up one morning and I'm like, I need to be there. And I'm a part of this whole plan. And there's something bigger. And I just took my sister's car, drove on the freeway, clipped it going 70 miles like onto the main freeway. And that kind of like woke me up out of that state. And then I just pulled over on the side of the road. I didn't even have anything with me. This is just like my mind. You think you would pack a bag or something. I had nothing with me except my brother's Bible. And I just got out of the car, watched all the cars on the freeway go by. And I'm like, I'm just going to run there. So I just proceeded to start running until I got tired. And then the cops came and told me to get down on the ground. I was still compliant, even though acting very like crazy. Then they tested my blood in the back of an ambulance and there was nothing in my system. I wasn't drinking on any drugs or anything. And that's, I think, why they made that decision to say, hey, we need to take him to the hospital. There's something more serious going on here.
Do you know, like, were you present in that moment? Can you remember, like, or was it just like you just black out, you forget?
I was definitely present in the moment, but I was also like believing there was other stuff going on. So I think like when you are manic like that, you're in and out of delusion. Because even when I was in the hospital, I thought that was a part of the plan. I thought there was someone who was at the hospital who was going to get me on a jet and take me somewhere else where I could still like fulfill what I needed to fulfill.
So your reality is just different.
Your reality and perception of everything is so skewed, and it's so difficult to explain to someone who's never gone through it. Because even at that time, you're coherent. You notice your family's there and stuff, but then you're also like, well, this other thing is still going on.
That's
and I still got to be a part of it.
It makes me think about when I put on like the VR goggles and you do that one thing where you walk on the plank and then someone pushes out the plank, like you react.
Yeah.
Because like what you see is actually there. Right. Okay, so I want to dive into something that's a little bit controversial with this because doing my research on you, I was going through all the different podcasts you've been part of, and I was looking at all the comments of people leaving and a lot of things that you're doing to impact people and give them hope about mental health and saying that this is spiritual. I think a lot of people just think like, oh, they just need drugs. They need antidepressants. They need all these different things just to mask it. And I think you're a believer that it's something deeper than just that. So let's touch on like what you think that mental illness was and what you think really mental illness is to a lot of people.
Some people will watch like clips of my podcast and think that I sit on the side of medication is not needed. And there are people in the area of faith who are like, put down the medication and you'll be fine. And that can cause a ton of problems.
Yes.
Like for my case, because how manic I was and how severe the psychosis was, medication was needed. Like I couldn't even help myself. And the people who were closest to me couldn't really help me either. So we had to get me to a place where they could sedate me and just bring me back to a baseline. So I think anyone going through some type of mental health crisis, especially as severe as bipolar, someone who's schizophrenic, medication is a supplemental thing that can help in a need of time. But I don't believe it's something that you're going to need for the rest of your life. But then it comes back to, what do you believe about the situation? So I think mental illness is something that is real. It's something that's happening and it's a battle that's going on in your mind. And there are different ways that we can approach that, from the pharmacological route to also the spiritual route. Because for me, that mental illness, I truly believe, was like an attack from the enemy against my mind, and it manifested itself in this mental illness. And because we believed that, when that diagnosis was given to me from a doctor saying, hey, you have this, there's no cure for it. Medication is there so we can balance your brain and you won't have to go through another one of these quote unquote manic episodes. If you don't take the medication, you run the risk of your brain getting unbalanced again and you going through this cycle and that being the rest of your life. And every time you do that, it damages your brain too, because it's just working so hard against itself. So as a family at that time, when I got that diagnosis, we said, hey, we're going to do everything we can in the natural, but we believe there's something spiritually going on because it doesn't live on either side of my family. And I just saw a lot of weird things at that time. And we believe as believers that we live in a supernatural world. There are things that happen that we can't understand. And so we took all the proper approaches in the natural, medication, supplementation, diet, all of that stuff. But then we were believing for God to move, since there was no human cure for it. And that's where we saw that deliverance and that healing happen. So I think for a lot of people today, it comes down to, what do you believe about it? if this is the rest of your life, if this is what you believe that you're going to need to be on medication, then that's an approach you can take, and that's fine. And yes, you can live a normal life. I just think that creates the inability to find freedom. And a lot of people who take medication, they still deal with a lot of challenges that come from dealing with an illness like this, because the other side of medication is it numbs you. It has so many bad side effects. Like I gained like 20 pounds, my blood sugar, all of these other things happened as a result of taking that medication. And I didn't feel like my normal self. So we wanted to find a path out of that. Medication was needed, but we believed that I wouldn't have to be on it forever. And I think that's the case that every single person faces when they're dealing with something like, hey, if you have ADHD, does that mean you have to be on ADHD medication for the rest of your life? There have been many cases of people, even in something less severe than mental illness or than bipolar, that have taken ADHD medication, but then have found natural ways to eventually wean off that medication and live a normal life too. So I think there's two sides of the spectrum, but I think every mental related thing there is a spiritual component to it.
Yeah, because it's interesting when you read the comments, it's almost like this is another option which people should be excited about, but it's there's no middle ground. It's either people validating that same thing happened with them, where it's like I went to God and I gave it to God, but then for somebody that's like, well, I try to give it to God and it's not working, gets very frustrated at those things. Then on the other side of it is people that were just like, this is stupid. Like it's not God. This is a physical thing. Take your drugs and everything else, right?
Yeah.
And I think like it falls in the middle.
Yes.
I think number one is like, what's your idol? And if your drugs are the idol and you just think that, no, God's not real and, it's not a spiritual, battle, it's just drugs. It's not many people I've seen that get fully healed, right? They could take their, their drugs and feel a little bit better. But like you said, the side effects there's other parts of their life that's suffering for it, right? And so it's almost like when I read it, it's almost like it's hope. There's options. Because if it was just your story, it'd be kind of hard, right? It'd be like, well, maybe that's just for Dayne. But you go through these comments, there's so many people that agree with it. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize like the power of prayer, which is why I love like it gets into, your channel that you start, which you pray for people and you're so diligent about it. So yeah, like let's clarify what we're saying, that it's not just, hey, I always think about when people think like, hey, if you're on a boat and you either need to row or you need to just pray, what should you do? And I was like, sometimes you got to do both. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you got to row, sometimes you got to pray. Like there's a balance between it all. So what we're saying is like, there's more options here. Mm-hmm. I do agree it's spiritual. Yeah. I think there's a stronghold on it, and the people that are locked in place with it, you see how angry they are. And also like that's a spirit of anger, mm-hmm. of somebody that's just resenting that, oh, you found your way, right? And so let's lead that into like, okay, you got out, you kind of get out of this episode. Was there any fear of going back into it? I guess, what was the framework and what did you do to try to get yourself to the point where you were stable? Like, what did you do?
Yeah. So after I got healed, it was a supernatural encounter, right? Like my hands were shaking. And after we got done praying, I felt like that spirit, that oppression that was on me, that was causing this, was lifted. So because I had such a supernatural encounter, I knew like that I was healed. Like,
what do you mean by that? Like lifted? Like what were you feeling?
Like I felt like when at the end of getting prayed for, I felt like something lift off of my body. Yeah. Cause again, like, and that goes back to my whole point of like mental health challenges like this are spiritual.
Yeah.
Right. Because it came on so spiritually, it left spiritually too. So I felt this thing lift. And because I had such a real physical experience with it, I believed that it was done. And so walking forward from that, it was pretty easy. But I will say, like, over the years, I would have times, a couple times a year where I'd hear that whisper from the enemy going like, what if it comes back? What if it comes back? You don't know. And just, you'll hear those things, but I'm like, I have too much evidence of what I've seen, and it's been pretty easy to walk out, like just being healed, and year after year goes by and that whisper of the enemy saying like, hey, this might come back, just doesn't really have an effect. I think it's different for everyone too. Some people, they don't see healing right away, but they work to like manage it. Because here's another interesting thing. After I was healed, I never went back to get my brain tested. So I could go back today. The place is 10 minutes down the road. I could say, hey guys, I haven't seen you in 11 years. let's put a brain map on my brain and see what it says. They could show me two things. They could say, hey, your brain looks exactly the same the last time we saw you. You still have this illness. And even if I saw that, the enemy could use that to be like, dang, Dayne, like you actually never were healed. But it's like, I think that's a testimony to people who have never seen healing. Like, has my life been impeded in any way from that time? No. Have I had to take medication? No. Or the report could say, hey, you're actually good and you're healed. And it's a miracle. Either way, I think that's a testimony, but I think the former is more powerful for the person who's been dealing with something for years, because this is an illness that most people struggle with their entire life.
Can you take me to the mindset that you were before it got lifted? Like, were you going in with faith and hope and encouragement? Or are you going in with doubt, fear? Like, what was the mindset going into that situation?
That's a good question. So after the diagnosis at the doctor, it was about 2 weeks till that service at church. And I remember my mom encouraging me to be like, hey, this is a spiritual thing. Your identity is in Christ. It's not in this crisis. I believe you're going to be healed. So her encouragement to me, we made a decision that day. Like, we're going to fight back. We're going to beat this thing. And we're going to believe for supernatural healing. So every single day, it was still a battle, but I was standing on the word. I was praying the scriptures over my life and just believing that God could heal me. But going into that service that day, I had no intention of going up to the front. I had known that's something I had done maybe 1 or 2 times, but it was at the end of the service where they just happened to say, hey, if you guys need prayer, like the pastor was like, me and my wife are going to be up here and we'll pray for you guys. And so my mom at that time, she looked over at me and she goes, why don't you go up for prayer? And I'm like, you're right. Like, why not? And then I went up to the front and that happened. So if they never made that altar, like that call for prayer, I wouldn't have gone up. So it's just interesting how like God works timing and all of that stuff. But I wouldn't say I was in a lot of doubt and fear, because now this is a couple weeks in just back to the case of, I never claimed it as my identity. Even when the doctor said this was your illness, I never spoke it over my life. I never was like, I'm bipolar and I guess I just have to deal with this. I'm like, no, I'm going to be healed. We're going to beat this. We'll take the medication. We'll do the supplementation. We'll just get back in the rhythm. Get back into the routine of doing things. And so that was my mindset going in, but I didn't have an inclination or anything to go up for prayer that day. So
are you coming from a place of like, before that though, did you have faith that you could get healed?
Before like that church service or the diagnosis?
Before the church service, I would say.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I had someone who was, I had a lot of strong believers in my family who were like, we believe you're going to be healed. Like, we believe this is a spiritual thing and we believe you can be healed. Do you believe that too? And I'm like, if your faith is that strong, like my faith wasn't so grand at that time, but I'm like, if you can have faith for that, if this is what the word says, if people have been healed from all different types of things, there's testimonies out there. Why can't the same thing happen for me?
Yeah. I talk about like, it's funny because we were talking about this offline, like you read the gospels and it's, God was always healing when there was like faith involved, right? If you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And I think a lot of people will be like, okay, God, I'll believe in you, but only if you do this, right? The but part is really important. So I always reference this, like people view God as like a vending machine, like put the money in and like, I'm only gonna put the money in if I get the snack or I get the candy, right? And that's not really true faith. And so it's interesting, it's like in the Gospels, like if anybody would just touch Jesus, like they're healed.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like someone spoke with the faith. So it's always like faith-based. Kind of want to get people to take like an audit of like, where's your heart really at? Because only you inside know, right? Yeah. You could be like, I'm trying everything. So somebody who's like literally about to hit send in this comment is like, I've tried everything, right? It's like, but where's the heart?
Yeah.
Do you actually believe it? Or are you just like, well, I prayed one time and it felt empty. And I haven't prayed in years, but then I'm just almost acting like God's a genie in a bottle, being like, God, heal me now, right? Yeah. The way you say it in the heart place is really interesting. So that for me is interesting, because then let's fast forward into what got you into lit with prayer. Like you starting this YouTube channel and like what got you to actually want to take that route?
Yeah. And I'll say one other thing on the faith component too, because I know you asked that. My faith was weak at that time. My whole like life was wrecked. Yeah. Like I was just about to graduate college because I took 2 years off. So I was finishing at ASU, getting a degree in exercise and wellness and health promotion. I was doing the YouTube channel. That was super fun. I was a personal trainer at a sports performance gym. I had my own personal training business. Like if you think about someone who's like following God's will, like everything was going right. And then that event happened and everything Lost that job, had to drop out of college, obviously, because I couldn't go, lost that personal training business. Everything was gone. So at that moment, when you're sitting in that doctor's hospital, you're at home with your parents, got to get back into everything. It's like, what else do I have? Like, I can either choose to be like, well, I guess this is it. Or it's like, no, I can choose to believe like God can heal me. Like, I've been destroyed in all of this, but he's bigger than this. So I think that's like one thing to the thing on faith. Like, I didn't really have any other like choice to believe. And then after I was healed, I decided to get into a different career because I was like, why don't I do something else? And I was reading a lot about like technology and software and startups because I was into books at that time. So I was like, why don't I move careers? So I got into technology. I did that for probably 6 years until like the shutdown happened around the world. And it was during that time where I was working for a startup at home. And I felt like the Lord was like, hey, you've talked about like, you've made so many videos on like content and encouraging people, but you've never talked about me. I want you to start sharing your faith. And I felt that prompting from the Lord, and I wrestled with it for like a few weeks. And because I thought I had to be like a minister or a pastor or someone who's like teaching the Bible to share my faith. And I just tried to give God enough reasons to not do it. And I think like the longer I tried to give him reasons, that more that like prompting to be like, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. Share your faith. So it was just one time when I was in prayer and I said, God, if you want me to do this, how could I do it where I would feel comfortable, but also confident sharing it? And just one word came back and it was like prayer. And that was the strongest part of my like walk with the Lord. So I said, can I just pray for people? And then I just said, okay, I'm going to jump on TikTok. No one knows me there. And I'm just going to make one video a day and just encourage someone with prayer. And that was my metric for the first probably 6 months, like one video a day, just post it, go back to work. That's all I did. It took me 20 minutes, 10 minutes in the morning. And that was the start of something that would become like what it is today. I didn't even have a name for it. It was just Dayne at the time, you know, but that's how it got started. And I think the seed of that starting too was God was trying to help me start something around my faith, but also going, I need you to testify to something that keeps so many people in bondage, which is like mental warfare and helping people find freedom. And it's not you needing to be the healer. It's you needing to just tell people what I did so they can believe that he can do it for them.
Let's get into the actual like mindset of when he actually like told you that for the first time. Cause I think there's a lot of people that think like, well, I don't hear from God.
Yeah.
Like I don't ever have these like, you know, signs and wonders and what people have. Right. So it feels like people like detach from it. They're like, well, so was it like an audible voice? Was it a feeling when you said like you kind of resisted it for a little bit? Like what happened during that time?
So I was just working at home and, you know, prayer life was really important to me. Reading the word was really important to me. It was more just a feeling and an idea. You know, I think people listening to this who are believers who want to hear from God, if you're seeking him, like the Bible says, seek me and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. If your heart's after him, like I want to know you, I want to know your word, I want to grow in these areas, he'll speak to you in a lot of ways. And I think one of those ways he'll speak to you is like, do you ever just have an idea? Does that idea just come from yourself? Or is there something more supernatural at play? And when you get an idea for something and it feels so heavy and it feels almost like a burden to you and you are a believer and you're seeking him, I would say that that's God trying to speak to you, especially if it doesn't leave, especially if it challenges you in an area where you know that like maybe God's pushing you towards. I think that's hearing from God. That's how I heard. It was just more of like an idea and a prompting on my heart, like do this, you know what I mean? And as I went forward with it, you know, you can talk to God about these things. And as you talk to him, I think you'll get different ideas because that's where that idea came where it's like, you've never talked about me. And you've talked so much on social media about encouraging people to grow and all this stuff, but you've never talked about me. And I'm so important to you. And I'm just like, man, that's so true. You know? So I think like for people listening, God can speak to you an idea that you have in your mind that you never let go of. And if there's not like all this like fear around it, I didn't have fear around it. I was just hesitant because it was foreign, it was unknown. So I think that's like a great way God speaks to us is, yes, he speaks to us so strongly in his word, but if you get an idea and that idea doesn't leave you and it's a burden on you and you're partnering with God to try to understand it, I think that's a great way that he speaks to people that they might just write off because they're thinking it's their own thoughts, you know?
Yeah, because we were talking about this with our buddy Rick Gutman, who was on our podcast, obviously, and you're hearing his story and it's so powerful. And he heard the voice of Yahweh and there was all these like signs and wonders and a very clear voice he heard. And I'm sitting there kind of just like, but I get ideas. I get thoughts that pop in my head. And it's like, I don't think that was from me. Right.
Yeah.
And then like, it's then all of a sudden doors will close on things he doesn't want you to do. And it's like, well, that was a reminder of it. And like, I think people could fall into the thing is like, no, that was my idea. Like that was what I did. And so I think like God speaks to you uniquely. And, it's easy for us to look at somebody else's story that's so powerful and think to yourself, like, I wish God did that, right? But again, like you don't see the full story. It's almost like when you're building a business, right? And people look at the success. And like if they could look into like the late nights and the tears and the ups and downs of it, they'd be like, I'm never doing that, And so I think like when people are listening to this and like they feel deflated, we're like, oh, Dayne hears from God and blah, blah. I think the important thing to touch on too for you is like you were in the Word and you were praying.
Yeah.
It's almost like a friendship, right? Like I think about with God, especially, you look at this concept where it's like, if you went to a friend, like if I'm friends with you, but if I never talked to you, I never checked in on you, I never sent you a call or a message or anything, like the relationship's not going to be fruitful. And all of a sudden, like 4 years go by, then I need something from you and I call you like, hey, can I come on your YouTube channel? You're gonna be like, this feels unauthentic, right? Now God is a lot more open arms than we are as humans, right? But I think the more you spend time with them, and even with my life, you've really encouraged me to pray more, and get in the Word and like make sure that was like really important in my life. I notice when I take the breaks and I get busy in business, my prayers fall short. They don't feel as impactful. And so that kind of leads me into the topic I really want to get into, and this was what I was the most excited for, is like, you're now this Christian content creator and you're at a very high level. You got a lot of followers, you have a lot of people looking at you. And the thing I appreciate with you and your friendship with me is you kind of broke the barrier for me about you. I was always coming to you to be like, okay, I need a Christian friend as strong as Dayne so he could help me with my faith. And I was just thinking like me. And then one day I remember asking, I was like, bro, I'm going through a desert season. Like the first 2 weeks, I felt God so strongly. And now like, I don't know where he is. And you're like, bro, me too. And I was just like, it broke everything. I was like, wait a minute. Like I thought it was just like linear for you where it's always creating. So let's talk about like your desert seasons. And I mean, do you even have desert seasons? Do you struggle? Some days do you feel like you hear God? Other weeks and months, do you feel like it's dry? Like, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's such a good question because it's not like brought up or like spoken about enough, especially in the lane of like seeing all these like Christian content creators. I've gotten to meet so many of them, but I've only gotten to see kind of like one side of them. And you see these Christian content creators, and I think it makes a lot of people think like they're super Christians. They've gotten to this level with the Lord where they just know how to be on fire and there's nothing ever wrong. But at the end of the day, the amount of time that you consume that content from that person is like not even 1% of their day, right? It's like 30 seconds here, a minute there, maybe a live stream, so a little bit more time. But I think I would say most Christians struggle with dry seasons, or like most people in ministry struggle with dry seasons. Or another way to say it, I would say I go through seasons of like weariness where I'm just tired and I'm drained, and it's like, it's not as easy as it is. I think everyone goes through seasons where they're just on fire. They're like dialed in, flowing, everything's going right. But then you'll sometimes go through those valleys. And I think those valleys are really important. And this is at least what I've learned, because I've struggled with this even the last, I would say, like 4 years sharing my faith. I've been doing it for 6, where I'll go through periods of time where God feels super distant, where my body just feels like it's like hurting more, where I feel like it's difficult to pray. My prayer life will start to wane a little bit. I won't be in that secret place as long as I typically am. I feel like it's harder to understand and comprehend the Word. And I think a lot of people in ministry face this, but we don't show it so much on social media because people are looking for hope and encouragement. They're not necessarily looking for someone who's like, hey, I'm just like struggling today, guys, but I'm still showing up because I want to show up for you, right? I think it's difficult to be authentic in that type of setting where content is so short form and people are looking for hope, encouragement. They're looking for something to boost them up. But I feel like when we have settings like this, or when I have the opportunity to jump on a live stream, I can be transparent with people because I can sit with them longer to go, hey guys, I've been going through it. It's really difficult. I need you to be praying for me right now. So I think for me, it's been seasons where it's hard to hear from the Lord. It's hard to pray. It's hard to read the Word. It's hard to kind of do the thing. Like even times where filming videos just feels not as effortless. Like for me, content's always been like effortless. Praying has been effortless. But during those seasons, it's like, I've got nothing. I've got no juice to give. And I think these things happen specifically for people maybe in the same space as me for a couple reasons. One, it's like to grow your dependence on God. Like, would you still do it for me if like I wasn't showing up as much? Like, do you still believe I'm here? So it's like growing your dependence, growing your obedience. But another thing, it's how do you rely on others? When you've been someone who's always pouring out into people's lives, how much are you willing to now call up people who are in the faith and be transparent with them to tell them that you're struggling, tell them that you're going through these difficult valleys so they can actually pray for you. So I think God is always orchestrating ways to help you when it feels like you don't know how to help yourself. So I think that's been like a really difficult struggle of mine. And I've had conversations with other believers in the same like ministry capacity or Christian content creators who've struggled with the same things. I think it's just hard to articulate that when people are looking for a certain message of hope and encouragement. And it's still a battle like I go through every year. And I think God's always testing my obedience to say, will you still sit with me in the room for an hour in the morning? Even if you don't feel like it at all, even if I don't say anything to you. And it's tough, you know? I think the things that encourage me during that time is opening up the word and going to places in Psalms where David is literally just like in such distress. And he said something in a scripture that like encouraged me so much because I went through a time where I felt like I couldn't even give God my prayers. Like I couldn't even come up with something to say to encourage someone else. And there's a scripture in there in the Psalms, I think it's in like Psalms 51, where he's like, unseal my lips, O Lord, so that my mouth can praise you. And I'm like, that's exactly how I feel. Wait, he went through the same thing too? Wait, there are other people in the Bible who struggled with weariness, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, worry, fear. Oh, they're just like me, even though these were just beacons of faith, you know? So that's at least the thing for me that I've struggled with most is not just going through a dry season, but not dealing with it very well. And I think because I don't necessarily deal with those seasons well, they are longer than they typically should be because God's like, come on. Like, you've gone through this before. We're going around the mountain again. I need you to learn something. But I've always been someone who it's really easy to rely on God when I feel like him moving in my life. But in those times where I don't feel like he's moving, I struggle with those. And I still struggle with it today. And I'm trying my best on social, especially in the live setting, to be more open with people like that because that's going to relate to a lot more people than them putting you on this pedestal of you're the prayer guy. You have all the answers to everything when it's like, I am just like you, you know?
Yeah, bro. I can't speak for other people, but for me, like when you told me that, it was just like a weight off my shoulders. Because like, it's interesting because like I grew up in the church too, but it's the Bible study stories where like everything's like, it's all good stuff, right? They kind of take the pieces of just like, we're just going to show the kids the good stuff. We're not going to get into like the deep part. Like it's David, you know, killing Goliath, but they don't talk about like the misery of what like he was feeling during the Psalms, right? Even with him like going to goth and just the crazy thing of him like acting like he was all mental illness. They're like, get this guy out of here, right? Like they're obviously not going to tell kids that story. And so the more that I dove into the Bible, the more I realized like, wow, how broken these people are. And I think, you know, God does that on purpose where he uses broken people and shows that like, hey, like I can use you for good no matter what it is. And so for me, I think I'm seeing for myself and I'm being vulnerable with this. It turned me off with Christianity in the church. And I had this phrase somebody told me, they said, don't let Christians take away from Christ. And I loved that because what happened was it was a lot of people that were just talking that like life was perfect and they don't deal with struggles. And, you know, I used to, but I don't anymore. And life is perfect. And it's so unrelatable for someone like me. And then it starts to make you feel like, what, am I just different? Like, as God doesn't have his favor on me, his hands, and then it kind of then like repels people from it. And so when you broke that barrier for me, it really got me to understand that like, okay, everybody goes through it. And it gets me to realize that a lot of Christian content creators, it almost, their identity gets trapped up in them being a Christian content creator, not with God being their identity. And so they might be feeling absolutely horrible. And I know from business, right? I show up Jared every single Zoom, every single meeting, right? Be times that, my wife and I are fighting, and then all of a sudden the employees come in the office and all of a sudden it's, hey guys, how are you? Right? So like, I know what that feels like to turn it on. And so I'm not being hypocritical here, being like, oh, they shouldn't do it. I understand it. But the thing I appreciate about you so much is like, you are willing to be vulnerable to get guys like me that are, really seeking the faith from a ground level and getting into the Bible more deeply, and then realizing like, wait a minute, this isn't completely opposite than what I thought this was going to be. I mean, you tell me like read Psalms. Yeah. I'm reading this. I'm like, bro, this is depressing. It's just like David asking, and then it's just like God's not there. And I was going through my desert season myself, where the first week or two that I really turned to God and got away from sinful things and just really started focusing on God. I was reading the Bible. I was on fire. I remember I called you and I was like, bro, the devil messed up, bro. Like, I'm coming. And then it was like a week later, I was just like, I don't feel these emotions anymore. I don't feel the presence of God. I don't feel these moments. And it's almost like vending machine, right? Will you be there if you put in money and nothing came out? Will you still be there for me? So I love the testing of it. What do you think? We're not going to call people out, but Joel Osteen. So he was on the Impulsive podcast, right? And he was kind of just like, really, you told me about the podcast and I watched it on my drive out here. And bro, I just felt like, there's no way that guy doesn't go through anything. And it felt so unrelatable. And if you think that he's helping people by saying that, or do you think that's more so harming people by saying that?
I think he's got such a brand in the faith and encouragement and like positive movement that it's so just when he's on in a setting like this, that's all he knows. So when a question's asked like, hey, so like sin and struggle and this, like, what do you deal with? It's so just not normal of him to go, what can I talk about? Because then it's like, what's perception? Yeah. I've got this big like following, it's this perception, but vulnerability is so important. And I think like, that's what I didn't see in someone like that. And I think everyone in the space of having a platform where you're talking about the Lord is also recognizing that like, you can't do anything without him. In that, I think we're going to start to see more of that, where people are just open and honest with what they go through, because Christian content creators or people in ministry will have two choices. It will be, you'll either be vulnerable about those things or you'll just walk away from it. Yeah. Because I think even one thing that the Lord has shown me during times like this is I've struggled to reach out to people to tell them what I'm going through, because in my mind, it's like, they don't see me that way. They see me as the person who's always on, who's the one encouraging them. And now I'm going to call them to tell them that I'm like really going through it and I need them. So I think that's the thing that like the Lord has also needed to work on me to be like, drop your ego. With me, without me, you can't do anything anyways. So like you need to like lean on some people, because what are you going to do? Are you going to do this on your own, or are you going to do it with me and reach out to some people? So yeah, I think people need to be more vulnerable with things, because and I've shared this on a few live streams too, when I was going through those seasons, when I felt like I couldn't feel the Lord, I'd go back to old patterns and habits where it's like, oh, let me just like go out with my friends and drink. And that was like something that the enemy had a foothold into my life on, to be like, and it's not like something I'm like drinking every day, but it was a distraction. It was something that was moving me further away from God, because I was like, I just need to feel something because I feel like I'm in so much pain and God is so far away. And that was something like I struggled with, and I had to like wrestle with that. So I think like when you see big people in ministry on platforms and they're like, everything is good, it's a hopeful message, but it might not reach someone who is in a place where it's like, I can't relate to that at all.
Yeah, I guess you're right, because it's a message I think a message you give can't hit everybody's heart. It's the reason why every single video on YouTube, there's hate comments and there's, great comments. Yeah. And so for the people that he's talking to, that makes a lot of sense, because it's for the people that need the hope, they need the encouragement, they need all of that. Guy like me, it tends to turn me off. Yeah. Now, just the opposite, someone just talks about, their problems and everything, then that could encourage me. But then somebody else looking for hope is like, yeah, okay, like this is just, the world just sucks, right? Like it's just, this is what it is. So I think that's a good point, because, I can only look through my lens. And that's why for me, it's like I love how social media, it's now turning to more long form where people get to do, you know, the live streams. They get to see the long form stuff. You get to really see who people really are versus the hooky, you know, hook call to action and short clips. And how can I minimize this and make this a short video within like pack a punch? And now it's like you get to see people's heart because, I mean, you know, all the things I've struggled with. And it's just, like you said, I never would have thought that you'd be a drinker and get into drugs. And people probably look at me and they're like, they probably never knew that I was smoking, you know, I don't even know if you can say joints. You can say joints, like joints a day, you know what I'm saying? And people be like, there's no way this guy's just working all the time. He's so healthy, he's so this. And it's like, you see a human just trying to fill a void.
Yeah.
And you're looking for all the right things in the wrong places. And you do it and it helps for a little bit. We talked about this offline, which I give the example of like, it's like a cup that has a tiny little needle hole in the bottom of it. You can fill up the cup with, you know, marijuana, alcohol, drugs, anything, right? A pride. And all of a sudden it fills up and you're like, I'm filled. Yes, I'm good. But then what's happening is it's unnoticeably draining. And then pretty soon you're empty again. And then what do? You scramble and then how can I fill it up again, right?
Yeah.
And I've noticed that just about all the people that go to those things is it takes care of itself for a short period of time and then they're back in the same mindset. And God is the only thing that I've ever seen through everybody I talk to and people where it's like, he is the whole thing. He is enough. And I always heard that, bro. And I was just like, God's enough. God's enough. It's like, it's so overused, right? But the words of being on repeat when you can't understand the words makes it feel like you're alienating it. You're just like, this, I don't believe this. But then when you actually understand the fundamentals of it, where it's like, no, God will fill the cup. I always thought, oh, that means God's gonna fill the cup and my life's gonna get better.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of times that's not true. A lot of times actually he deprives you of things to build you up stronger, right? You think about, you pray for wisdom. How do you actually get wisdom? You got to go through really hard times.
Yeah.
You know, it's not this easy thing of just like, oh, I'm going to give you everything. Money's going to hit your lap and you're going to do all that. How did I build my wisdom? Well, it's almost losing my business multiple times and, you know, calling Jake and being like, bro, like I'm scared. And then me being, what happened? Within that 1 week, I learned more and I had more wisdom. I asked better questions because I was scared. And so then all of a sudden I got out of that phase and it's like, oh, now I have real wisdom. And then how do you get patience, right? It's like, well, you have to be deprived from things for a very long time. So people want all of these rewards, but they're not willing to actually go through the fire to actually be burned. I talked to Rick about this and I said, it's really cool to learn the process of refining silver. And what happens when you refine silver is they take the silver and they put a flame on it. The hottest part of the flame has to be on the silver for it to refine. And then they ask them, when do you know it's refined? And they say, when it's so hot that you can see your reflection. It's like, that's what God does for us, right? He just holds us to the flame. And people I think like, well, that's kind of aggressive, right? Like, why is God wanting to harm you and hurt you? It's like, well, no, I think he's taken off a layer that you don't need. And it might've been your identity from the very beginning. And I look at someone like you and I want to talk about your identity. You now being in prayer and you now growing, you know, this, you know, Christian content creator empire, having all these followers and having a lot of eyeballs on you, which is crazy to see your office in there because like you just realize how many eyeballs like hit that room. Do you feel like you've changed as a person? Like if you were sitting across from Dayne 10 years ago having a conversation, could you recognize that person or are you completely different?
I would definitely recognize the person in the form of like someone who loves to encourage people, someone who's got a lot of energy, like ambitious. I would just say someone who didn't really know the word, like, because I wasn't deep in the word. I was growing in prayer, but I wasn't deep in the word. And I would say probably one of the best parts of starting to share my faith was my faith grew so much because it was always like what I was doing and what I was thinking about. So I think God also wanted to take me on a journey to be like, I need to show you things. I need to teach you things. I need to give you wisdom in a lot of different areas. It's going to be so hard and it's going to be so difficult and you're going to walk away from a great career in technology eventually when, you know, I was starting and didn't know that, but like, you're going to get me. And I think that's the thing that God's always trying to help us realize is that he is the reward, right? Like we want all these things in the world that hopefully give us the peace, the joy, the, you know, faithfulness and the patience. But when you read the scriptures, it talks about Jesus being the vine and us being the branches. And he says, apart from me, you can do nothing. And he says, if you abide in me and I abide in you, your life will produce fruit. What's that fruit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control, gentleness, and faithfulness. It's all those things that we seek the world to find. So I think God has to do this open heart surgery on us to pull us away from the things of the world and get us to a place where it's like, you're my reward. You give me everything I need and then send me out in this world to do things. And because I'm seeking you first, like it says in your word, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be given to you. I'll take care of all of those other things that the world is just trying to get your mind so focused on. And that's a process that takes years for someone to get to, where it's like, I need him more than anything else. And it's a process of God working on your heart to be like, David, like my heart is after you first, you are everything. And as a result of that, he can trust you to carry more wisdom, carry more anointing, carry more platform or status or things that this world might be like, oh, you're some special person. But it's like, no, all the glory goes to God. You know, he's the one who built all of this. I'm just managing it for him. And if he wants me to do something else, am I willing to walk away from all of that? You know?
Yeah. I love how you talk about the fruits of the spirit. I think what the most impactful thing for me is part of that chapter as well is the fruits of the flesh. Yeah. And if you can look at those two, you list out those different things, right? And you start to realize that the people that are falling short, they usually are the fruits of the flesh. Yep. And then what happens is it's really interesting because like I got the visualization where it's like, okay, you know, a tree is at first roots, it then sprouts up, but then you really don't know if the tree is good or bad until you actually taste the fruits. And so it looks like it's a tree. It looks like it's going to produce good fruits. It might even look very appealing. Then you take a bite of it and you're like, wait, this is bad fruit. And that's like the fruits of the flesh. And then so I got honest with myself where it's like, am I living in anger? Am I living in discord? Am I living in lying? Am I living in all these different things that are you know, fruits of the flesh versus the spirit? And I got really honest with myself where all of a sudden I was like, yeah, no wonder that, you know, I'm seeking more and not finding it, right? And it's like, it's all in there. And that's why like you encouraged me so much to read the Bible and actually read it to try to understand it, not just read it to get through it.
Yes.
And so many people I talk to, which I think is really interesting, they'll have something against the Bible. And I'm like, can you show me your Bible? And they don't even know what Bible they're reading because they're not reading the Bible. So it's almost like someone like not even seeing a movie and being like, I hate that movie. It's like The Lord of the Rings. Oh, worst movie ever. It's like, would you watch it? No.
Yeah, right.
It's like, what are we talking about, right? And so the more that you actually like dive into it, that's why I love people say like, it's the living word because, bro, I've read it, but I've read it with the wrong mindset. And then I read it again with a different mindset. And then I read it again. And each time it takes its own course on me. And that's why like you and I would talk about different passages and you would then like say, oh, it means this. And like, you should go into this chapter and you should go into this book. And like, all of a sudden I'm like getting like encouraged to actually read through it. And I got to the point where I was like, man, like again, I was on the standpoint of, I don't even know this book. I don't even know who Jesus was. And I'm judging it being like, it's not for me, right? Because again, it's easier to pick up the substance. It's easier just to do the things that the flesh is yelling for you to do. So I want to ask you this. This is like a personal question for me to you. Somebody that like wants to start a YouTube channel and grow to the point, what were things that you found out getting an audience this big that you weren't really accounting for that kind of surprised you?
I think when I started my YouTube channel, again, it was just another place for me to place the videos. And I was just making short form content at the time. And again, when I started, because I had that 10 years before, I was like, I don't care if the videos get 5 views or 10 views. I'm just going to post it there because if it encourages one person, that's great. And I probably posted 70 videos before one broke 1,000 views.
Jeez.
And so I was like, oh, cool. Like I'm putting out a message, the algorithm can see it, find the audience, and eventually we'll get there.
Sounds oddly familiar.
Yeah, so it was
We'll get there though, Jake.
It was 1,000, or it was 70 videos before one broke 1,000, and then it was like 2,000, 5,000, and then some videos were getting like 500,000 views, and those videos were bringing in a lot of subscribers, but it was more on the short form content basis. So I think the biggest thing for me was, hey, there are people who are seeking this type of content. Let me just create a distribution system where I'm posting. I think at the time when I started, I was like, I'm going to post like 2 or 3 videos a day, 2 or 3 short form videos a day, and just never stop doing it. So that first year, I maybe had like 10,000 subscribers.
Was it 22?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And then it just started growing and growing from there. But I think like you'll hit like down moments too. Like I don't think my content's reaching as many people, but also my frequency has gone down. So I've been making maybe like 1 video a day instead of 3 videos a day, and maybe testing different things. I think that's another thing that's tough being a Christian content creator, is you can get into that landscape of like, I need to optimize everything. And I'll go through periods of time where I'm like, I'm just going to share videos. Like, it doesn't matter if the content like reaches more people, or, oh, I've got to like really think about, because I've been in modes like that where I'm like, what content's performing really well? I want to go recreate that for myself, and it wins and it works. But then I'll go through periods, and I think that's a period that I'm in right now, of like, just make content. If you want to make a video today, 1 video, 2 videos, 3 videos, just do whatever you want. Because I never want it to feel like a job where it's like, I'm on this hamster wheel. I've got to give the beast, the machine, what it needs so I can be rewarded. But it's like, what's the reward? Doing what God asked me to do. That's the thing. So I'll go through ebbs and flows like that with content. But I think the biggest thing for growing any type of channel is, do you have a message to match a market that's looking for that type of message? And can you produce it with enough consistency and output to create a library of content that could reach people, and do that month after month, year after year?
Do you find it's a lot of pressure sometimes?
In the beginning, yeah. I mean, even with like the weariness and burnout in the first year I was doing content, maybe not in the first year, maybe in the year 2, I was answering every single comment. I was answering every DM. I'd go up and down my apartment complex, and I would send people voice message prayers back. And I would do that for like 2 or 3 hours a day. And I got to this point where I'm like, this is so much, because I just had a video that got 2,000 comments. Now I've got to go and even put a prayer hands or a God bless you. I had 1 video and I didn't respond to all, but I probably responded to like 20% that got like 20,000 comments. And I was literally responding to every single message back from people.
Getting carpal tunnel in the thumbs.
Yeah. And then I was taking on the weight of what people were reaching out to me on, because I'd have people reach out who were like, I've got a family member who's dying. Can you pray for me? And I'd be like, not get back to them for a week. And I'm like, hey, I just wanted to like check back in. And they're like, yeah, it's too late. They're gone. You know, so I started to feel a lot of weight of that. But God like checked me so hard when it wasn't like the audible voice. It was just like clear idea that would not come from me, where he's like, I never asked you to do any of that. I asked you to share content. So that like took that pressure off of, you do not need to respond to everyone. You're not someone's church. You're not someone's pastor. You're someone who's just sharing a message I put on your heart. So that calibrated me back. I still respond to messages and comments and DMs like that, but I'm not pulled to be like, I'm responsible for everyone's faith. They're responsible over their faith, and I'm there to like help and encourage when I can. But that was a huge release of weariness, burnout that I was experiencing, because I was on my phone all day.
How do you deal with that? So I love what you just said right there. Like, how do you deal with knowing God gives you a car to drive, but then sometimes you put your hand on the steering wheel and then you start to drive it yourself? Like, how do you deal with like the overlap of that? Like, because that hit me really deep, because I'll hear God say something and then I'll start something and it works, and then I will then see it working, and then I'll just fully take control of the whole thing. So how do you deal with that?
I think it's an ebb and flow with him for sure, because we want to still steward things that we feel like are from the Lord with excellence. What does excellence mean? Well, excellence means I'm doing everything and anything I can. And I think he'll pull you back when it gets unhealthy. Because at the end of the day, does the thing that God asked you to do become more important than him? And I think that's where that balance has to bring it back to like, hey, I'm first. Not this platform I've given you. This platform's an outlet, and yes, I want you to be there, but now your platform is becoming everything. You're putting that on a pedestal. You're putting that as like something to idolize and something to like, you need to control over so much. So I believe he'll have moments where he'll pull us back to be like, hey, spend time with me. You need to be filled up. And I think for everyone, it's maybe a little bit different than the situation that you're in, but is it creating an unhealthy obsession? Is it creating an unhealthy, like, work ethic? Is it creating an unhealthy environment? Is it taxing your body? Is it pulling you away from your family? Is it pulling you away from taking care of yourself? And is it pulling you away from time with him? I think he'll help balance those things out as you see maybe the thing becoming more. That's how I've always seen it, at least for myself, because I've gone through many seasons like that.
I love that. So for somebody like me, like I want you to give advice to people like me that when things are going bad in my life, it's so easy for me to run to God because like I just have this surrender feeling where it's like, oh God, like, you know, like I just need you. Like what's going on? Everything is drowning. I need you.
Yeah.
But when things are going right, I just wake up and I'm on fire for business and I just want to get the deal done. I want to send the emails and I want to grind. I want to go this. And then I don't have the time in the prayer or the talking. I don't talk to him as frequently. I know you kind of deal with the opposite of that, right? But what would you say, like either both sides, like what you deal with, which is more like it's hard for you to lean on God when things are going bad. Mine is hard for leaning on God when things are going good, right? What would be like the common denominator with like how to help that?
I think from your standpoint of when things are going so right, an easy first step is to be like, why? You know what I mean? Like, why is all this good stuff happening? Oh, wait, every good thing comes from you, Lord. So like you're blessing my life. How can I better do this? I'm going to invite and involve you in. Now, it might not be like I got to spend an hour in the morning in prayer and I got to spend an hour in the word, but it's like, I need to just invite you in and I need to check in with you all throughout my day. Meaning you can get up in the morning and talk to him, pray about things like, hey, Lord, you're blessing my life. Everything I have is because of you, and your grace and hand of favor is on that. And I am aware of that, and I will never lose sight of that. And I want to remind you of that, and I want to invite you into what I'm doing. Will you give me the wisdom to never forget that and to walk into what I have to do today without forgetting you? And then just continue to bring him in. Even if it's a 10 minutes in the word in the morning, just finding that time, but then more so being aware and acknowledging that he's there and inviting him in. Oh, before that next meeting, and you just finished a meeting, it's like, Lord, thank you so much for like giving me the opportunity to give wisdom to someone I was working with, Lord. Like, and then it's like, it's just acknowledging him and then asking him for grace and guidance moving forward into the next thing. Because even no matter how busy your day gets, and this is something I've got to work at getting better at too. It's like you have these moments between the moments. And I think for you, the easiest way to start is just bringing him into those moments between the moments to check in and be like, you get the glory. You are so good. Everything I have is because of you. You're blessing this. You're blessing me with this. I'm never going to, help me to not forget that. And Lord, keep giving me the wisdom and favor to steward this well so I can do it step in step with you. That would be my advice to someone who maybe struggles more so on having the work take over, because that's happened to me in seasons early on with Lit with Prayer, where it became so much about the mission and my prayer life waned and my Bible time waned, because I was like, I'm doing so much for others, but this is like what you've called me to do. And then I would go into a challenging season right after that. Yeah. God was like, you didn't even involve me because it became all about your work and your stuff. Is it not all from me? You know?
Yeah.
So I would
good point.
think about it like that.
Because like for me, it's interesting because it's almost like I'll do that, and then it needs to be like a constant refining. I think people think like one prayer, one message, your life has changed. And actually for me, it's the refining of I'll go to bed on fire, I'll wake up, and then I have these tendencies just to take the wheel over, right? And then all of a sudden I'll drive the thing off the cliff, and then as it's going off the cliff, I'm like, God help me. And all of a sudden it becomes an airplane. I'm like, I got it now. I can drive an airplane. And then all of a sudden it crashes into a jet ski. Then I'm like, I got the jet ski. It's just like, it's this chaotic loop. And I think you're so right where it's like, he's teaching me to run to him during the process. How else can I learn that? Right? If it was easy for me, I wouldn't learn that. It needs to be where it's like, okay, you're not very good at it. You told me something that was so powerful. For your listeners, I don't know who I am. Obviously, I do Ironmans and I'm working a lot. There's a lot of things that I do. And you told me, Jared, you're really good at suffering in Ironman and suffering in business, but you're not great at suffering for God just yet. And I was like, oh, I love it, because it brought me back to beginning of Ironman where I was horrible. I was horrible at suffering in Ironman. I don't want to get in the pool. I was complaining about 3-mile runs, right? And then over 5 years later, it's like, a 13-mile run is easy for me. Like I could be on the phone with you on a Sunday and I'm running on the treadmill for, 13 miles. And what happened there? It's like, well, I consistently did something every single day for 5 years to get to that point. Well, am I doing something every day with God for that long? And it's like, no, I always had a relationship with God. It wasn't very big. Recently, it's like, really turned my life towards him and started really focusing on like, this is what matters the most. Like I had to touch fire, unfortunately, to know it was freaking hot, which is just like so frustrating because it's like, but that's the journey that God wanted me to use.
Yeah.
And for me, I know that, I look at the journey and I'm like, I'm going to be so much more relatable to people, certain people, right? I'm not for everybody. You're not for everybody. We're for some people. You're for some people. And so I think that's what God uses. And when he told me that, where it's like, you're not great with suffering for God, it gave me a clarity of like, let's suffer then. Yeah. Okay. Now it made the suffering almost like gym and weightlifting, where it's like, if you didn't know lifting heavy weights was going to make you get bigger and more strong, you'd probably be like, what the heck just happened? Like my muscles are sore, and you'd probably leave the gym, right? But since you have the confidence and the faith to know that this is supposed to be this way, right? So I love what you said about that.
Well, and suffering with God, it doesn't have a blueprint like suffering for an Ironman or suffering for the gym. And I think that was something that you were starting to go, okay, I can do it, but like how? And it's like, you just got to let him work on you. And the way you let him work on you is you partner with him and stuff. Similar to what you, I think, said when you were talking to Rick about like God being the CEO of your business and your life. You can think about that as him being your founder or your partner in it. If he's your founder, partner, CEO, how often do you want to talk to him? A couple times, or you take over, or do you want to partner with him on it? Right. So I think that's like,
that's so powerful, because I thought about if God was a physical person, like you said, as a CEO or a founder, and we grow this huge company and somebody comes to me and they say like, wow, your company is so impressive. I would probably be like, oh, our founder is just amazing. Right. And so like you start to think about those things, and it's like, well, when I actually did put God as my CEO and founder, all the glory did flow through him.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of actually, honestly took a weight off my shoulders, because it wasn't mine to carry everything anymore. And that's a lot of weight, bro. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're doing this YouTube channel and it wasn't for God, it's just the weight you have to carry. It's so heavy and it will break people. And God allows you to carry weight his way, which feels very freeing. So I love what you said, like when you got prayed for and like the weight was lifted off your shoulders, and like everybody hears the word like weight lifted off, but it actually physically feels like that, right? Yeah. Whereas all of a sudden it's like, dude, like, I remember for me to be vulnerable, I think I mentioned it, but like, my struggle was with calming down the brain. And so what I used was marijuana for a long time. And nobody knew, and nobody even knew that I was, high, because I did it for so long. I didn't change my personality. It was just like, whatever. But I got to a point where I was like, it was so heavy, bro. It was like, I have anxiety, and I thought it was like, it was helping me, but it was really hurting me. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I stopped, and the week of just withdrawals was brutal. And I remember I stopped for so many years, and then I would rebound back 30 days later. And I finally surrendered this last time, where I was like, okay, God, I'm going to do it your way. I'm going to give it to you. And I have faith, because before I didn't have faith. It was like, I'm going to use you, God, but it was using him. Right. I had faith in it. And again, I don't want to be unrelatable to people, but bro, I didn't feel the withdrawals. And Rick told me this. He was like, you don't need to stop, Jared, but pretty soon it's just not going to serve you anymore. Yeah. And just trust God, trust God that he's going to, lift that from you. And I finally, to the heart again, right? I finally believed that and was like, okay, God, I want to get rid of this thing. And it due to such a different experience. And there's so many times I could have, picked it back up, and now we're, almost 4 months sober, and I haven't even thought about it.
Wow. And
it's not even like a thing where it's like, yay, let's celebrate my sobriety. I don't even think about it, bro. Like I'll smell it, because I work from California, so it's everywhere. Skunks everywhere in that area. And I'll just all of a sudden smell it and be like, I don't need it.
Do you struggle to calm down now that you don't have that mechanism that you used before to calm down?
So it's funny, because I've separated the anxiety now, where I don't have the anxiety that the marijuana was actually causing me. And I thought it was helping me, but it would only help me for the short period of time to hit the dopamine. Yeah. And then I would get a bunch of anxiety after, until I smoked again. And then it would help me for 20 minutes, and then be a bunch of anxiety later on. And so it got to a point where it's like, do I struggle with calming down the way that the first 20 minutes of taking a hit of marijuana does? Like, yeah, like that was because it was instant relief. It was, you're miserable to you're back to normal. Now I'm just normal all the time. So I don't have these valleys of up and down. It's almost like having a sinus headache. And if you could just pop it like a balloon, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's so much relieving. But what it's doing is it's such an elevated feeling to normality. And so now I'm learning that normality is actually just a consistent flow. And I would have thought like when I'm going through stress and things in the business, like run to it again. But for me, it's like, no. And again, I mean relatable because people, if I was listening to this 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I'd be like, dude, screw this guy. I've been trying to do this for years and I just can't. But again, it was the heart placement. And it's also my responsibility to show up in a better way and, have a kingdom business for the first time. And I can't be mixing the waters, right?
Yeah.
1% of poison in a cup is still going to kill you.
Yep.
And so for me, it's like taking it very serious. And, I'm a father and my son is, starting to notice things about me. And so that was a big thing of guilt for me where it's like, I don't want my son being like, how can you teach me all these morals, but then you couldn't kick this thing?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so it was just like, the battle was bigger than the pain of what I was going through. And again, bro, like I love you for this, but you helped me so much with it. I was so vulnerable with you the first time we met. And like, I think a lot of people, once again, I've learned that my vulnerability in these things actually helps people to give clarity because I could easily just act like, people look at Jared Carver on paper and they're just like, this guy's so impressive, all these different things. But then I wouldn't really feel that because I'm just like, I'm hurting inside. Like again, I have this cup that has a hole in it and it's draining. Like, oh, bro, you're so impressive. You do Ironmans and your business is so successful and all this. And I'm just sitting there being like, I feel like a piece of crap. And it was so unrelatable. And then that got me a point where it's like, now God allowed me to go through this phase of my life where I now have a testimony that I can have empathy for people. Someone comes to me and it's just like, bro, I want to stop weed. How'd you do it? First of all, I want to just be like, okay, do this, this, and this. I'd be like, well, I'll ask questions. Like, how you doing with it? Like, what's going on? So
Like, why do you want to stop?
Yeah.
Because I think Rick's saying that to you too. Like, you don't have
weight off my shoulders. Because I thought I was going to call him and be like, bro, I stopped. He's going to be like, oh, yeah, bro. I'm like, yeah, bro. I love Rick, dude. He's honestly the best. And so, but yeah, bro, I like to wrap this whole thing up. What are you working on? Is there anything you're excited that you're going to bring to market or anything that the audience should know?
I just released my second book. It's called The Devil Hates This Prayer. It's a book around combating some lies that we believe from the enemy, because I think that's the thing that a lot of believers struggle with, whether it's a lie that like you're always going to be anxious, you're always going to be addicted, depressed, you're not enough, God can't provide for you, lies around rejection, relationships, just like 6 different big areas of life. So just released that. That's kind of the newest thing that I'm working on and just putting that out there. And outside of that, just, continue to make prayer content and just other ways to meet people on social media and just trying to create more resources for people. I don't think, I don't have all the answers, but I just want to share the things that I've learned and just let God do the rest with it. So yeah, that's kind of what's new.
Well, bro, I think it's fitting for you to wrap this thing up with a prayer, if you don't mind.
Dude, I would love to.
Let's go.
Let's go ahead and do it. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for anyone who is listening right now. And I thank you for Jared and just making a space and a place for us to be vulnerable about the things that we've struggled with. And also to let someone know who is maybe going through something super heavy, Lord, that you're there, you're with them. And I just pray that you comfort them right now. You give them hope, you give them encouragement, you just give them what they need. Just bring them a peace that surpasses all understanding. And I just pray for anyone who's tried to just carry everything on their own, Lord, to know that they can partner with you. Your word says that we can cast our burdens onto you because you care for us. So I just pray for anyone who's just been holding on, trying to do it all on their own, feeling like they have a lot of weight on their shoulders, Lord, to just feel a little bit of lightness, Lord, as they just be vulnerable and are honest with you about what they're going through. I pray for someone who feels like they're going through something that they can't relate to anyone with, that they just reach out to someone who they're close with and that they can trust and just be honest with, Lord, so that you can just help them know that there are people who love them and care for them, and that there's hope. There's always hope found in you. And I just pray for you to strengthen them during this season, protect them and their family. I pray for you to provide for them in the areas that they're working on, whether it's their business, their relationships, their finances, their fitness, Lord. Just provide them in the areas that they need and help them create just a strong dependence on you. Lord, will you speak to them in ways that they've never been able to hear you speak to them, whether it's through the word or through just you giving them a prompting on their heart to do something new. You are close to us, Lord, and you love this person so much. So I just pray that you comfort them and bless them. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Love, bro. We love you guys. Next episode.
Let's go.
Thank you, bro.
Of course.
Appreciate you.